Welcome to Jobs and Pods, the only podcast where you can hear real employers talk about their jobs and reveal what it's like to work there. I'm your host, Chris Russell. This Jobcast will feature Floy Campbell, a Validation Platform Development Manager in Intel's Digital Enterprise Group. Intel is the world's largest semiconductor company and has its headquarters based in Santa Clara, California, with offices located worldwide. Floy, welcome to Jobs and Pods.
Thank you.
Okay, tell us how long have you worked there, and tell me more about your role at Intel. What do you do?
Okay, well, I worked at Intel for 12 and a half years, which means I'm coming up on my second sabbatical.
Okay.
We'll talk about a little bit later. I am a Validation Platform Development Manager in the Digital Enterprise Group. What that means is basically I manage a team of hardware engineers, and we design platforms that Intel uses internally within the company to test out and validate all of our silicon products and platform products that we develop for servers, workstations, and as well as desktops and clients. And so I manage a team of about 40 engineers, mostly based here in Santa Clara. I do have two people up in DuPont, Washington.
Now, let's talk about life at Intel. As a female in a technical role like this, how do you balance your work and your personal life?
Very carefully. I found for myself it is very helpful for me to be very organized, both in work and in my personal life. Work, I'm sure as you can imagine, does get very busy. Our projects are very exciting and very challenging, and we get to work with people from all over the globe. So my team works with people who are in India, who are in Israel, who are in Malaysia, and so it does actually require quite a bit of organization, to keep my sanity. But I do, a lot of the methods that I use in my job, I actually find apply really well to my personal life.
Oh, yeah?
So basically, prioritizing my tasks, figuring out what's most important to do, what's most urgent to do, and then what I can't do and don't have time to do. Those are similar things that apply across both.
Okay. Have you ever felt discriminated at Intel with respect to your gender or anything?
No, I actually haven't. I have been very lucky to work with some very diverse teams. And I have to say that during my entire career here at Intel, I have not felt discriminated against, either because of gender or because of ethnicity.
So I imagine then you feel you're treated the same as your male peers.
I do. And, having talked to people at other companies where they don't have a very formal performance review system in place and where it's not stated very clearly what are the indicators for success and how are you measured on your performance, I think that's one thing that is actually a huge benefit at Intel. Those are very clear, very published guidelines. And, your raise, your promotion, your career progression is really based on meritocracy and how well you do and what you've contributed.
Okay. Does Intel offer any kind of mentoring programs to further support employees' personal development? And along those lines, have you ever mentored any young women in your career there?
Intel does have a formal mentoring program. I think it's called Mentor Match. And you can sign up there and actually sign up to be either a mentor or a mentee. And I think you have to fill out some information about, what kind of areas you're looking for mentorship in, whether they're personal or business, technical, management, basically give a few, fill out a profile. But I think outside of that, Intel also has other programs that they run that are not maybe labeled as mentorship programs. I know we have a yearly Senior Technical Women's Conference, and so, some of the senior grade technical women are invited to that conference, and they get to network with each other and discuss, the new technologies. And there's also a Female VP Leadership Council, which I think also runs annually, and there are a couple of meetings a year with women at the different sites. We get to interact with the female VPs, in a more personal setting. So even though those aren't official mentoring programs, I think those are ways in which, you get exposure to other women who could be mentors for you.
Right. Okay.
And as far as myself, I'm actually engaged in something called MentorNet.org right now, and that's outside of Intel. But it's very similar to Mentor Match. It's just that it's an external, and it pairs people in industry with students for the most part.
Right. Okay. What's the career growth potential for minority applicants at Intel? How would you characterize that?
I think there's a huge growth potential. I don't think it's necessarily limited to, certainly not limited to minority applicants. Although in the past few years there has been a huge focus on making sure that minority applicants, and for Intel, that's kind of defined as either technical female or African American, Latino, or Native American. But there has been a huge focus in the past few years to make sure that those traditionally underrepresented groups are progressing along their careers with equal parity as the rest of the population. But I think in general, because Intel is so merit-based and performance-based, your career progresses based on how well you do and how much you contribute. So I think there's a huge opportunity for anybody who's very self-motivated to learn and to contribute to do well here.
Interesting. Okay. So I know Intel is recognized by many organizations and publications, including, let's see here, Working Mothers magazine as a great place to work. What kind of networks and opportunities are there at Intel to support, females in the workplace?
I think some of them I've already mentioned, like the Senior Technical Women's Conference and the Female VP Leadership Council. Intel also has several, I think around 20, officially supported and funded employee groups, and one of those is the Women at Intel Network. And so they do conferences at each site, annual conferences as well, to promote, issues that are of concern to women in the workplace.
Right.
As well, there are kind of other things. I have 2 young kids, so, some of my concerns now are not those that I came into when I first started working. What has become important to me are things like, having fairly flexible hours, being able to work from home if necessary, having a lot of resources, such as just information on things like childcare. And I imagine, as my family ages, I'll probably be taking advantage of elder care resources as well.
Right. Okay. And last question for you, Floy. What's the best part about working at Intel, in your opinion?
I think for me, I would list 2 things. One is I get to work with some really bright people, but also very, very great teams and great people and very cooperative. Work on designs that nobody has done. And we're really pushing, the envelope of technology. You can't go and talk to somebody else who's already done a design like this and get some tips from them because it doesn't exist. So that's very exciting to me. And then also I've had a lot of opportunity to kind of try to influence the next generation. And, through the Women at Intel Network, we do a lot of kind of outreach programs. One of the ones coming up next week is called Tech Bridge, where we bring in girls who, I think for next week it's high school aged, from lower income communities who may not be exposed to things like engineering and science, and bring them in and do a couple workshops with them and kind of just show them what it's like to be an engineer and what it's like to work at Intel.
Right.
And hopefully spur some of that, excitement for the next generation.
Excellent. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Jobs and Pods. I want to thank Floy for joining us today. And again, visit intel.com/jobs to apply for jobs at Intel. We'll also place a link to their career site on the Jobs and Pods page under this podcast. For more Jobcasts like this, visit jobsandpods.com. And don't forget, you can subscribe to our Jobcast on iTunes. Thanks for listening, everyone.